hopefully I'm coming out live. I'm just going to check on my laptop. And I'll wait for people to join me in the whelping box. So let's have a look. Okay, let's have a quick look. Oh, good day. People joining. Let's make sure I'm coming out live. Oh, excellent. Okay, cool. I'll just give it a minute for people to join. Let's have a look. Okay, good. So I'll just wait for a couple more people to join. Excellent. I'm going to swipe these up because they're a little bit distracting. You can see the puppies then. So I'm in the whelping box with Great and her. You can see her babies. I think you can just see. You can see everybody there. It's a bit hard, but I should have got a different colour bed in hindsight. But yes, I know it's all about you. Good girl, settle. I'm not fussing you forever. Good girl. So yeah. Oh, okay, good. People are joining. All right, I'll wait for a couple more people to join. Then I'm going to discuss a little bit about reactivity, and it's a nice little lead-in with these guys. So just let you know how they're getting on. So obviously, if you follow me on Facebook and Instagram, you'd have seen Great, my Border Collie, had 5 all-boy puppies, which is, you know, not something I've had before. And all their dad is a red merle, and they're all black tries, and Great is a black and white. So who knows, you know, genetics is a wonderful thing. But yeah, 5 tricolour boys, and as they were popping out, we were hoping for some girls, and possibly, you know, a merle or a colour of some sort. But nonetheless, a friend of mine had puppies. She had 5 dog puppies, and she had 5 female puppies, bitch puppies, and all black and white, and her bitch was blue merle, and the father was black and white. So, you know, the wonders of genetics. A very good friend of mine gave me a quick, my friend Sean, who I kept telling her that her question, or her subject of choice should be Border Collie colours on Mastermind. But yeah, so she gave me a quick rundown on genetics, very brief. So but yeah, they're all doing really well. They're all putting on weight. She's been brilliant. She's this is her first litter, so it's always, you know, you're always a bit tentative about when a bitch has her litter of puppies, but they're all doing great. They're all putting on weight. They're eating at the moment, so I won't. Are you eating still? Or are you sleeping? You're sleeping. So this is little Jaguar. They're all named after big cats because their dad is called Tiger. Little tricolour boy, obviously, like all the others. So your baby, should I put him back? She was eating. There we go, good. So she's taking it all in her stride, which is, you know, super great. You're always a bit dubious, as I said, but she's got such a good temperament. You know, I didn't think that she would have problems, but you just never know. And as an inexperienced, she's just coming up to 3. She's young. As I say, she's just lapped it up. She's been a fantastic mum, haven't you? Really, really attentive to them without being excessively so. So really, really pleased with her. Oh yeah, good, cute babies. Okay, people are joining. All right, excellent. So exciting day today. Other than just meeting the puppies, it's the beginning of my lead into launching my new project, Relabeling Reactivity, which is going to be released as of Monday next week. So all this week I'm going to be doing live talking about reactivity and the contributing factors. This box is a little bit cramped. Let me just stretch my legs out. The contributing factors that create reactivity or potentially create reactivity. And having these puppies prompted one of the discussions, which is about genetics and socialization. I'm going to talk to you guys about that today. So all this week, as I say, I'm going to be doing these sort of lives to let people know about the upcoming project, and also to give you insight about some of the contributing factors, and also how to get around it and things that you can do if you have a dog that's reactive. Later on today, I'm going to be releasing a little video. If you share and like that video on Facebook, you can go into a giveaway to get a Made by Jinx, which Made by Jinx is a great company in the UK. Amy and Caitlin, lovely people. They run this little company where they make dog leads, dog collars, t-shirts. I should have put my Made by Jinx t-shirt on. T-shirt, clothing, snuffle mats. These great snuffle mats. So these snuffle mats are excellent. They come in a little bag so you can seal them. So you take them out on a dog walk, etc. They're really, really practical to use. I've got 3 of those to give away. 3 double-ended leads that I'm going to give away. Hopefully they'll be arriving this week, so I can, you know, I'll show you them. I'm really super excited to give those away. And also, you'll get a copy of my book, Pathway to Positivity. So later on today, I'm going to share a little video. I'm going to post a video, share that on Facebook, and be eligible to get the giveaway of a Made by Jinx lead, Snuffle mat, and a Pathway to Positivity book. All right, so just to give you that little bit of incentive. So obviously the conversation today is about genetics and socialization, 2 contributing factors to reactivity. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm okay. So if we look at what dogs are, and certainly the breeds of dogs, we've essentially manipulated genetics to our advantage. So I'm going to talk specifically about these guys, Border Collies, and what can lead into reactivity. So the interesting, obviously, when I did the live on the talking about the questionnaire, was how prevalent the notion of reactivity has become globally, which was really, really fascinating. And it seems to be the word to describe a varying degree of behaviours. The name of the course is Relabeling Reactivity, because I want people to look at that, labelling their dogs differently, and to look at it differently and to discard the label, essentially, okay? So one of the massive factors that can cause reactivity or contribute to behaviour that is deemed or perceived as reactivity is the genetic influence to reactivity. And there's 2 distinct areas that we can look at when we're talking about genetics. So the first one is, if we're being truthful about what dogs, the relationship that we, and I talk about collectively we, have with dogs. Originally, dogs were utilised as a tool for our means. So if we look back, you know, since the dawn of time, we manipulated what dogs or wolves were to become a tool to help us lead better lives. So they were obviously predators, and we manipulated their instinct of hunting to our own gain. So specifically Border Collies, we manipulated, or we've taken that desire to stalk and to corral prey into a spot or into an area, and we've used it and we've manipulated it and refined it to become the modern day Border Collie. So those traits, however, are still interlinked with the dog's instinctive predatory drives, the predatory sequence. Over time, we've obviously honed that and watered it down and played around with it to make it much more usable for example, if you were a farmer or your dog was herding sheep, and even more so, for example, like Grape, who is more of a sports-bred Border Collie. We've watered that down even further so that it's not quite so extreme. So while she is quite a herdy dog, if you take her out for a walk and she likes to stalk my other dogs, generally speaking, she would have lesser eye than some of my other dogs. So the eye was the term that we used, that stalking, that intense stare that dogs give. She has less of that in comparison to some of my other dogs, which makes her very, very trainable. And that eye is just the right amount that she has. However, there is still that trait in her. And when she was young, I made loads of effort to avoid that desire becoming a problem. So if we go back to the genetics, she's genetically hardwired, as all dogs are, to as their predators and to chase prey and to react prey. A Border Collie even more so. She's a breed of dog, or they are a breed of dog that is motion sensitive. So all these guys will have a predisposition to want to chase things or look at things that move fast. In my situation, and for the homes that these guys are going to go to, those traits will be harnessed and utilised in activities or in dog sports. However, if they weren't used effectively, or those traits weren't harnessed and given an outlet, those things can implode, or they can become destructive, or they can become problematic, or they can become dangerous, and that can result in behaviour that's deemed reactive. So a lot of Border Collie types of herding breeds that I see that have behaviour that is qualified as reactive, it will be down to their desire to chase something and that fixation with movement. So if it's a kid playing football, if it's a bike moving, if it's cars moving, if it's another dog running, that can often excite them and cause them to get overstimulated, over-aroused, and therefore display a behaviour that is then deemed reactive or inappropriate. So I know it's all right. So it's really, really important to understand a dog's genetic predisposition to behaviour that could be deemed as or develop into reactivity. And I keep on using air quotes because, again, I want you to think differently about reactivity as a whole. That is one massive aspect of the genetic influence to reactivity and something that we should consider. So when you have your... Oh, you all right? You getting cross? Is there no more milk at the bar? So when you pick the dog that you are intending to get, or if you've got a rescue dog or a rehome dog, it's really important to get an idea of that dog's genetics and how that could become problematic. So if you've got a puppy, there would be things I'd be doing with these puppies specifically that will hopefully channel that desire to chase things into something that's productive, and that would be me and creating focus for me. So I do a lot of games which will be manipulating their instinct to chase and to run after something and pursue something for my own gains. So I would use that to create a recall. I would use that desire to build in focus. I would even use that desire to chase me to in order to get them to ignore other things. So for example, if there was something that they were in nice smell, I could run away from them and play a game of tug to use that desire to chase to override the thing that's causing them to be distracted, okay? So that's an example of some of the things that you can do when you have a dog that's chase-driven. If you look at the dog that you have, or if you have that information, that's a really, really great way to be proactive about dealing with behaviour that could develop into reactivity. If you don't have that insight, so for example, if you've got a rescue dog or a rehome dog and you don't know its genetic makeup, you can make sweeping assumptions because it's a dog and they're predators and they are hardwired to have predisposition to want to chase things. We can be proactive, and the way in which I approach it, I don't just treat my border collies different to my my boxer or my Malinois or my Jack Russell Cross. I treat them all the same, and I play those foundation games until I can probably then deduce which ones that dog's going to be more likely to react positively to. So for example, with my border collies, I know that the chase games are going to be the things that they're going to really respond the best to. With my boxer, it would be more of the tugging games and that real vigorous play, or even food might be his bigger thing, depending on the environment I'm in. So looking at the genetic predisposition to that can lead to reactivity. The other example of reactivity is when you have dogs that, I as a breeder, I've bred great, and I know the history of the sire that I used in this instance. So I have a lot of information that I can bring to the table when you are breeding dogs, and I do a lot of research. I would look years in advance at dogs, and I would do lots of extensive homework. Ideally, I'd know a lot of dogs and that dog's pedigree. Obviously, I own both her mother and her father. I know her mother's siblings. I know her father's siblings. And I would do all that homework would help me to be able to make an educated decision, or informed decision, I should say, about what her pups could be, and therefore the sire that or the respective dog that I'm going to use that I'm going to put her to. That doesn't always happen for whatever reason. It doesn't really matter, but if you can have that information to help you, it's really, it means that you can get ahead of the game, so to speak, so you know you can be proactive from the get-go. Again, if you have a rescue dog, if you have a rehome dog, just be proactive about those things. Use the dog's natural income, and also observe the dog. So in Relabeling reactivity, I go through the various types of reactivity or behaviour that can be deemed reactive. And also, this is part of the course, talking about the causes of reactivity. And if your dog is, say, for example, prey or motion sensitive, there's a series of exercises that you can do to utilise and harness that desire in a positive way. So whilst with my dogs, the way in which I approach owning them and rearing them is I allow them to have an outlet for that desire, and I also utilise that desire. So it's almost a two-pronged attack when I want to be proactive about it. I provide an outlet for that desire, and I also use it to my advantage. Okay, so that's a huge part, the genetic factor of reactivity. Are you cleaning? You doing some housework? Good girl. Good girl. The other aspect is, and that's something that these guys are going to be which will probably happen more so away from me, is socialization, and certainly the appropriate socialization. My feelings about socialization is, I think that if we look at the spectrum of dog training, and having been training dogs a little while now, there was a whole spate at one point, probably in the mid-90s, where there was a real push towards socialization, which was brilliant. You know, the understanding dogs need to be socialized, and we had a whole burst of puppy parties, and it was very much the done thing. And in my opinion, that could largely have contributed to some of the misconceptions and the misunderstandings about socializing effectively. So the way in which I approach socialization is in a very, very strategic manner, and I'm very cautious and mindful about the experiences that my dogs have when they are being socialized. I can slurp my coffee. And I ensure that each of the experiences that I have is a lesson in itself, and I am proactive in the. Oh, let me just pick that up. In the lessons that I want my dogs to have. So when I socialize them, I don't do taking them to a million locations or take them to loads of different, which is probably contradictory to what a lot of people do. I would take them to places and I would create an experience for them. So I perceive it as a lesson. So for example, if I had a puppy, I would take it to a location where there would be other dogs. Okay, that's a good one. And I would have my puppy a considerable distance away, and I would give the dog a Kong or give it a bone, or I would allow it to just observe, depending on the situation. And I would set up a situation where the dog would learn to a certain lesson. Now, my long-term goal with my dogs is to have them indifferent to things. I don't want a strong response to dogs or people or to moving objects or to noises. I want them to largely be indifferent. But that indifference is trained into them or taught or educated. So if I had my puppy, and if I was with one of these guys and I was keeping one, I would be taking my puppy to places and allowing them to observe the environment, to take it all in. If I had a snuffle mat, I could use that. I could also use a Kong, I could use a bone, and just teaching them to largely ignore the world going by. If I wanted to socialize them with another dog, I would be really, really, really proactive in picking and selecting the type of dog that I mix them with. So each breed of dog has its own distinct dialect. So Border Collies interact with dogs like Border Collies, and it sounds obvious. Boxers will interact like boxers. German Shepherd will interact in a very distinct way, which will be determined by breed characteristics, physicality, and what that dog is predisposed to. So for example, these guys are going to want to herd and chase and run around and even possibly nip at another dog's heels. If they did that to, for example, if one of my Border Collies nipped at my boxer's heels, he could take great offence at that, because he doesn't understand that that's a Border Collie's way of initiating play and causing the other dog to chase. So it's really important that my dogs, that with all of our dogs, to prevent them being defensive or to lack social skills, we're making a concerted effort to expose them to other dogs of different breeds and different types in a controlled and systematic manner. So it isn't a case of I take my dog to the local dog park, for example, let the dog off and let things play out. I am arranging for it to meet another dog, whether it be a friend's dog in a controlled environment, a house, a garden. I appreciate some of those things are a little bit restricted at the moment, but be creative about what you do. And that certainly as we move out of lockdown in the UK, you can be a bit more proactive. And we can start to set up his experiences. Now, a lot of people certainly at the moment have been concerned about having what the term that's going to be used is lockdown puppies. Actually, in my experience and having had Jungle, Hottie and Reset in this time period, actually it's been probably the most helpful thing that could have happened to them, because people are less likely to come up and want to say hello to your puppy and to invade that puppy's personal space or let their dog come up in an unsolicited manner, because obviously we're a little bit restricted about the social distance, etc. So in actual fact, it's done my dogs the power of good. Now, obviously I have other dogs, so I'm able to socialise them. But even if I had one of those dogs and didn't have all of my dogs, it would be a great opportunity for them to go places and to see the world go by and learn to ignore other things. until such time that I can introduce them to another dog, or I source another dog that is of appropriate skill set and social interaction, or social skills I should say, where my puppy is going to have a positive experience. So that in itself can take time. So if you have a young dog now and you've just coming out, if the dog is of an age where you want to get out and socialise it, do your homework on the dog that you use. Even if it means waiting longer to find the right dog, that's a better thing to do than to jump in and access the most available dog that, you know, has pointy ears or has a squashed face or has a hairy face or etc. I would bide my time and pick a dog of more of an appropriate temperament so that your dog's going to have a positive experience. The other thing to consider is, certainly as your dogs, depending on your age and when you got your puppy in lockdown, be really mindful of jumping in and trying to expose them too soon. So if, for example, you got your puppy last year, it's going to come up to that really, really crucial age where it's entering adolescence. At that point, and again, I'll talk about this in more depth in later on this week, your dog's going to be entering a hormonal phase where they're going to be emitting hormones, they're going to get hormone changes, so they're going to be more sensitive to other dogs approaching them or being in their personal space. That would be with my dogs where I retract them from meeting any dogs that they don't know. So when my dogs are of that age, I tend to only mix them with dogs that they've met before. The reason being is they're going to have a history of reinforcement or history of positive experiences with that particular dog. So if they have an untoward experience, I know that the hope being is that what the experiences they've had prior will cause them, will buff off that to a degree. And also, if I'm moving forward post, if anything was untoward was to happen, I can meet and access that dog again to rehab their relationship. So think about really not throwing your dog in the deep end. And I equate it back to, for example, with Neve, she is socialized in very, very controlled settings all the time. So again, prior to lockdown, she would go to her activities. I wrote a blog about her going swimming and the experiences she had there. About how she goes to ballet, and again, that's a controlled socialization. And she goes to her preschool, again, controlled socialization. So she's been introduced into situations where she's meeting other kids and she's learning to share and she's learning to wait her turn. She's learning to have social skills, to engage with her peers, etc. But it's all in a very, very controlled manner. So really think about the concept or the notion of socialization as a lesson in itself. It's life lessons, all right? So just a couple of things there to think about with that can affect socialization and, that can create reactivity. So if your dog is not been socialized appropriately or you've made some missteps with socialization prior, it's not too late to undo. It's just a case of thinking about putting safety first. So if need be, create distance, muzzle train the dog, parallel walking. All those techniques can be used to rehab your dog's social skills. If your dog has had an untoward experience with another dog, again, you can use reinforcement, you can create distance, etc. to build your dog's confidence up around other dogs. Okay? So, hopefully, who cut your hair? Who cut my, no, Mel's, no, who cut my hair? Lois. I have my own personal hairdresser. Dave, you're jealous. Get Dan to do yours. Okay, so hopefully that's given you some insight into some of the contributing factors to reactivity. I'm going to talk about the others later on this week. Genetics and the genetic influence to reactivity, whether it be that your dog is predisposed to certain traits that if they are not harnessed or utilized, they can develop into reactivity. If your dog is from parents that have even poor temperaments, if you've come from unfortunate circumstances, if the dogs come from more unfortunate circumstances, and they have a predisposition to being fearful or apprehensive, and certain breeds can have that trait anyway, you need to be really, really vigilant about the experiences and certainly socializing them so they don't have anything that can cause them to be defensive or apprehensive, which can then later on develop into reactivity. So, for example, Jungle, although Jungle has a fantastic temperament, Jungle is from a breed that I would be very cautious about socialization because she, as a breed of dog, Malinois are very, very forthright. They're very, very in your face, and they, generally speaking, have poor social skills. Certainly the dogs that I've had, they're very, very in your face. They're very, very imposing, and that can put a lot of dogs off. So when I socialize a breed like that, I'm very, very, very cautious about the dogs that they mix with, and picking dogs that are going to set boundaries with them, that are going to be not going to be put off or going to be concerned about them because I have a duty of care to the other dog, and doing it over a longer period of time than I would, for example, a dog like Great, who's really, really sweet and very, very, socially very, very savvy. So it's about knowing your breed of dog and being aware of the possibilities of what could go wrong if you don't take those proactive steps. All right. So I'm going to see if there's any questions on any of the discussions that I have, or any of the points that I've made. Got to be up 4 months now. He's not, but now he's confident. Yeah, I think it's quite a common thing that your dog will at some point have an untoward experience with another dog. It's, people get really, really apprehensive about that, but it's really, really natural that, I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong, I said it is just not an unknown thing for your dog to get an altercation with another dog. Certainly in adolescence, I think male dogs especially, they're either going to get in a little schoolyard fight or they're going to get beaten up. Yeah, and I'm not saying that's right, I'm not saying it's wrong, it's just what happens, and it's how to deal with that and not allow it to develop into a bigger problem later on. Okay, let's have a look if there's any questions. Don't sit on the puppy. I'll try not to, Anne. Okay, let's get the puppies. Dennis got beaten up. Okay. I just have a dog that used to help. I have had a dog that was used to help reactive dogs and now have another that has the same qualities. How much should I expose my new dog to being used as a role model dog? So that's a really, really good question. So having a dog that could effectively be a stooge dog or a confidence building is great. As a trainer, I have dogs that I would absolutely use. I would be mindful of the dogs I would meet. My dogs are very, very confident around other dogs. I can bring most dogs into my home, and that my dogs are very astute. They give the dog space, etc. But it takes time, so I wouldn't. Oh, shutting up the shop. Good girl. I wouldn't do that with my younger dogs. So Jungle, Hottie, and Reset, I wouldn't use them in that situation because their temperaments are still being built and their confidence is being built. Whilst all three of them have very sound temperaments, I don't want to use them with a dog that's reactive or aggressive or defensive and potentially create an issue there. So I tend to use my older dogs that have a huge history of meeting other dogs and in a varied, broad and diverse mix, so that they're really dog savvy. So if I use them in situations to help my clients and another dog lunges at them, they have a level of resilience to dust it off. I always am very cautious about doing it initially, so I'm not cautious in an apprehensive way, but just very vigilant. Create distance, if need be, have the other dog within a muzzle, create space, create distance, etc. I tend to do it in areas, open areas, so that we can progress to having one dog off the lead and one dog on the lead, and so forth and so forth. But yeah, it's a great tool to have a dog that you can use as a stooge dog. Just be mindful of the age of the dog that you're doing it for the long-term gain. Thriller's been an absolute fabulous dog for stooge dog, and Scooter was brilliant. But from you, especially those of you who do dog sports, I'll just tell you one little example. So both of those dogs went through a little instance where in a competitive scenario, they would randomly miss. We have an exercise at the highest level of obedience where you leave the dog at the other side of the ring, you walk across the other side, and you give the dog 6 positions in a set sequence by the judge. And both of them went through this state of being very, very focused, really, really attentive, and then randomly they would miss a position. And this went on for a little while, and I just thought it was so odd. It was never the same position. It was never the same number in the sequence. So it was a real conundrum, and I kept data. I watched my videos back. I couldn't observe anything that I was doing. I went back to basics, built some confidence up, thinking, okay, they've just, etc., etc. And then it dawned on me is actually somebody randomly videoed them for me, and just got it from a slightly different angle. And what I saw was the reason why they were freezing. So what would happen is, parallel to me competing with them, I would use my dogs as stooge dogs with behavioural cases. And when a dog we were decreasing the distance to another dog approaching. If the dog was lunging or moving into them, I would make my dog sit or wait in a control position, or they would offer a control position, and I would reinforce them for such. So the dog would approach, they would be asked to sit down or stand, and then I would repeatedly feed them in position at varying intervals. So they were essentially being reinforced for holding a position as a dog approached. What they learnt was when that the dog approaching them was the cue for them to stay in position. So when they were across the other side of the ring, if they were in a sequence and another dog approached them, they read that as, oh, I must stay in this position whilst the other dog passes, and then Dad's going to break me off. And it was only when I saw it in a very specific, I saw somebody, so in this particular scenario, Thriller is in the ring, she did several positions, did them brilliantly, really, really sharp, really attentive. She was in a down, the other dog approached her from her back end, behind her, sorry. I gave her the position, she ignored me, the dog moved, I gave the cue again, she carried on the sequence as if nothing happened. So it was a really, really important lesson for me to pick up on, that if you have a dog that's for sports trained and you have a dog that's used for stooge work, how the two things can often overlap, and just be mindful of it from a training point of view. All right. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of insight. Let's have a look. So Lynn Mays, I look at my. Okay, so Lynn just, I think, I took on board my dog picking up on my eyes everywhere, on lookout, anxiety. We had a mooch about occasionally throwing food. He was loads better. Thank you. So one of the things that's very, very typical that people train is their hypervigilance. So a frantic call of voice. I'm not going to call. So if I said Thriller in an urgent tone, that could very quickly, because there's another dog coming, be a cue. That intonation could teach the dog to be hyper vigilant. Yeah. So what I would do to fix that is just to randomly say the dog and the dog's name, calling it back to me in a frantic tone, and let the dog work out that reinforcement is off if they come back. So you could say the frantic tone, name, run away, play with the dog. So the dog learns to come back really, really quickly when that happens, and you don't emphasize that there's another dog about to turn up. What are your thoughts, Fanda? What are your thoughts on owners causing anxiety? Absolutely. So just to give you a little bit of an insight, and I'm going to go over this a little bit more in some of the subsequent lives. The massive part of dealing with reactive behaviour or problem behaviour is helping the owner to overcome their mental block, their confidence, because there is most definitely, and you know, dogs can read us like books. You know, we again, coming back to our relationship with dogs, we've been attracted to them. We have that deep rooted connection because they do bond with us so well, and they do pick up on our emotions, they do pick up on our mood, and they do pick up on our anxieties. And there's most definitely a connection between the two things. So in Relabeling Reactivity, the online course, that has been absolutely considered, and there is a unique entity that I don't think is covered anywhere else, probably on any course of this type, that looks at empowering people as well as dog training. So I'm going to again go into that in a little bit more detail, but absolutely there is a huge connection there. Okay. Yep. So Angela asked a similar question. So yeah, absolutely a link. And if we don't help the owners, we're not going to help the dogs. And so the two things are most definitely interlinked. Okay. So my terrier is now 7 months old. He's great with all dogs, reads them well, and moves away as soon as he senses he's not wanted. Thought it'd be a problem as he arrived thinking he owned and ruled the world. So far, so good. He is monitored all the time, though his prey drive is huge. And ISD full working lines. Great. It sounds like you've got a super puppy, Anna Greek. Again, with dogs like that, they're such a rarity and they're such an oddity. My words of advice is don't take it for granted that, and be proactive. I would say that to anybody, irrespective, even with dogs with absolutely bomb-proof temperaments, still be cautious, because you only takes one bad instance to set a series of domino effects off, and your dog develop an issue. Hormonal reactivity. Margot, pre-season up to 6 weeks can be snarky with other dogs, particularly when they sniff a backside. Would you actively avoid dogs in this period or stop practicing the behaviour? Yeah, if she, like, it's very common. So I can tell several weeks before one of my female dogs is either due in season or there's a hormone change. And because there'll be a little bit more snarking and a bit of posturing, and it doesn't escalate, but I'm just aware of that change. And to be honest, I just diffuse it domestically, and out and about, I would just police the dog, call the dog back, give her some treats, escort her away from the other dog, and avoid her having that experience. Because if the dog is, generally speaking, social, you don't want her to, have that experience and that unnecessary attention from other dogs because of her home, and that will make the dog defensive. So yeah, I generally would keep the dog out of that mix. Okay. I think Jackie Ridley, can any age be helped? My girl is fearful and went out. I clicked it. Well done and agree. Yeah, absolutely. So 4-year-old, absolutely, you can. You've just got to be realistic about it. It might take you a little bit longer, especially if the dog has had a history of reactive behaviour being reinforcing to the dog. That doesn't mean that you've given the dog a treat when they've lunged at another dog. It means that if another dog approached them and they lunged, the other dog moved away, that's the dog being reinforced for displaying that type of behaviour. So it's really important that you take your time, build up slowly. And, so I've had a lot of, private messages and comments about the recent programs on television, which use methods that I don't. And what are my thoughts on it? And and I tend not to wade into too much discussions about this because to each their own. But what I would say is I think that there's the reality of a lot of the stuff that we do with under the banner of reinforcement-based dog training takes more time, because it's much more, it's not about creating that instantaneous, wow, look, bang for television media type response. It's about creating a solid foundation. And for me, the investment of creating that foundation and taking the time, like with all things, is worth building on, and it's part of the relationship developing. Now, there is absolutely instances where you can make a really dramatic effect really, really quickly, and I would say I've had that numerous times with dogs that I've had that have become to me for residential training in a very, very short space of time. I can appear to create a very, very fast and dramatic difference in the dog's behaviour. But there is contributing factors to that, and that, one, they're around dogs that are very dog savvy. 2, I have experience of handling dogs and practice my mechanics and practice my timing, and I don't have that, I'm not going to get anxious and feed into the dog's concerns. So there's a lot of factors that can allow me to create a very, very impactful level of progress in a short space of time. But if we, again, it comes back to the relationship that we have with our dogs. If we don't help the owner, we're not going to help the dog. So with my clients, I urge them to take the time and be much more systematic in how they work for reactivity, and be patient with themselves and accept that they first got to build their confidence up in order to help the dog. That in itself can take a real amount of work. And again, in Relabeling Reactivity, the online course, where there's a discussion point and there's information and tools that you can use if you have a dog that's reactive and you think that could be a contributing factor, that can help you. All right. Okay. If dog had a fight on lead, would you stick to control training for a while before letting any play? Not quite sure I understand that, Linda, but I think it's if the dog's had a fight on lead, would you stick to control training for a while before letting any play? Yeah, I'd absolutely be cautious. Cautious and sensible, I think, is the case. Not being overcautious and being fearful, because that's going to contribute to the problem. But I'd most definitely be mindful, because it's going to, again, coming back to the point of what I just said about, it's about as much as the owner's confidence as it is the dog's confidence. Okay, can a dog be helped that has been got so reactive with noise and movement, who is 6 and a rescue owned for 4.5 years? Nothing I do is helping. Yes, I would say, I don't like to give guarantees, but I would say you can absolutely improve that dog's behaviour. I would confidently say you can massively make an improvement. Often when a dog has a long established history of reactivity or problematic behavior, the first thing is being really, really truthful about areas that we can improve with the dog. Yeah, so core behaviors that we can teach, which are instantly going to give us more control, it's going to give us more confidence, and it's give the dog more confidence. Secondly to that, it's being really truthful with ourselves about, can we do things on ours? Can we do work to help the dog? Can we do work to help the dog? So, for example, if we have a level of anxiety, can we work on that? Do we have a lack of confidence? Can we work on that? And again, I keep saying it, in relabeling reactivity, that's absolutely being considered, that it isn't just about the dog and it isn't solely about the trainer or the handler or the guardian. It's about both, and making sure that we are addressing both. And in my opinion, you can absolutely make a huge amount of impact if you take that multi-pronged approach to overcoming problems and building confidence. All right. So hopefully that's given you some insight into reactivity. The two things that I've talked about today have been the genetic influence and socialization, and appropriate socialization most specifically, and being proactive in how we socialize our dogs to ensure that no problems don't develop, and genetics, understanding that a lot of the stuff that dogs do that can be labelled as reactive, they're genetically predispositioned to. So if we're vigilant about that and proactive, we can harness and channel those behavioural traits into things that are useful to us and are beneficial to us. All right. So hopefully that's given people some insight. I'm going to... unless there's any final questions. Excellent. Okay. So if you have any questions, but I haven't picked them up, by all means, you're picking this up later on, just post them in the thread and I will share that. I'll answer that. If you want to find out more about relabeling reactivity, go to www.relabelingreactivity.co.uk. Just sign up there and you're going to be receiving information throughout the week. I'm going to be doing a couple more of these lives talking about the other factors that contribute to reactivity, and put it in your diary, okay? On the 4th of March, so this Thursday at 7 p.m, I'm running what I call the Relabeling Reactivity Symposium, where you get the opportunity to meet the contributors to Relabeling Reactivity online course, myself and others who have come together to make this course so unique and hopefully help people from a broad and diverse background, whether you've got a dog that is prey driven and that's the cause of the reactivity, or you've had a previous negative instance where that's been the contributing factor. We have an expert that can help every single version, okay? And again, we've been working behind the scenes for a considerable amount of time to make this such a unique course. So if you want to join that, go to relabelingreactivity.co.uk, input your email, and I'll be sending information later on this week about how you can join that. Now, the format of that will be a Zoom call, which I'm going to live stream onto Facebook. So obviously with Zooms, you have limitations with the amount of numbers that you can have. And don't panic if you can't get onto the actual call. It will be live on Facebook and you can ask questions and I can answer them, and the experts can answer them on that. All right. Finally, I'm going to share a video later on if you want to get a opportunity to do get a free giveaway. It's a free giveaway, a chance to win a snuffle mat made by Jinx. Go and check them out on Instagram, everybody. Go and hit them up and give them a follow. Made by Jinx, great company, based in Nostam, lovely girls, do great work, really passionate. So it's nice to support small business, especially in this current time. So Made by Jinx snuffle mat, Made by Jinx double-ended biothene lead. I use them all the time when I walk my dogs. Yeah, really, really great tool to have. They're very durable. They come in great colours. They even have really cool brass fittings. So go and check them out on Made by Jinx on Instagram. And there'll be a copy of Pathway to Positivity, my book, which lays the foundation of how I raise my dogs and for dog sports. So just share. I'm going to release that video later on. Share that and put yourself in the name for put yourself in the draw for a giveaway on that, which will be drawn on Sunday, this coming Sunday. All right. So unless there's any other questions, hopefully this has been informative and helpful. As I say, I'm going to be doing a couple more lives. The next one I think is going to be on Wednesday. I just need to double check that. and then the Relabeling Reactivity Symposium on Thursday, and then a live on Friday. So I look forward to having you join me on that. Just go to the website, check it out, and put your email address in, and then I will contact you, or I will send an email with further details. All right. So, all right, guys, I'm going to get on. I'm going to go and let her out and give her let her out for a wee just before I go and do some errands and do some work. And I shall love you and leave you. See you later, all. Good girl. Whee.